Hello, another video from the Angry Photographer here. Going to be reviewing a new lens I've been meaning to do for months. And before you start whining about my top lens recommendation, which is the Tacchino 100mm macro 2.8, first we're going to talk about what distinguishes them and why the Tacchino still remains the same position. Obviously, not going to change anything on that. I'm not going to get wishy-washy on anybody. All conclusions are logical. Today we're going to be reviewing the Sigma 2.8 APO macro EXDG OS ABC XYZ. I love it when they stick all those acronyms on there. Anyway, it is an extremely honking beast. It is a macro lens. It is also got a lot of glass elements. While the Tacchino 100mm 2.8, which remains in its position as #1 recommendation, I will not get wishy-washy on anybody here and go like, oh, this is my new favorite lens. And then you'd be like, oh, weren't you recommending that other lens before? Now you're pissed. No, nothing has changed. We were talking about differentiating out what one has, what the other one doesn't have. The Tacchino remains in its king position here. So, let's look at another rival macro lens and what it has and what's so special about it and what it doesn't have. Now, this lens is extremely honking heavy. The Tacchino is a 9-element lens. The Sigma is a 19-element lens. Minimum focus distance on the Tacchino is 11.8 inches, and on the Sigma it is just a hair over 15 inches. Now, ultimately what I would reduce this lens to is if you are, like myself, a total macro slut, then I would say purchase this lens. Now, while the Tacchino is $380 new, and actually a good bit cheaper than that if you get a gray market, the Sigma is a $1,200. Well, actually, that's full retail is $1,200. You can actually get a B&H new USA warranty for $1,100. Effectively, like on an APS-C crop sensor mode camera like this, you have an effective crop focal of 225 millimeters. Now, what makes macro so fun is a lot of macro photography. You're shooting insects out in the wild, and what you run into are two things in macro photography. Point number one is that on short macros like 40s and 60s, while the 60mm is awesome, it is not a proprietary macro lens. I've told you that in other videos. Is that the bad thing about macro is when you have to shove the lens up the ass of the subject you're shooting, and typically when it comes to birds and creatures and little bumblebees and stuff, you've scared them off, obviously and logically. That's the reason why. The other thing too is that you have to have a complicated flash bracket setup, which I've showed you in a prior video. Well, I'm all for obvious, countless reasons which I've enumerated in prior videos, getting your flash off the damn camera. There can be a time where you want to take a quick macro shot and you're using this lens. And by the way, it does have extremely fast autofocus, and it is very quiet. Is the autofocus faster than the Tacchino? Yes, it certainly is. So would it make a really decent telephoto sports lens because of its extremely fast autofocus capacity? Yes, that would be the case. And while I'm totally against pop-up flashes and on-camera flashes, they do have their point in time where, you know, you obviously can't whip out the huge macro bracket and take a flash shot, and you just want to, it's like, oh, there's some sort of cute little whatever the hell it is, and I want to take a macro shot of it, you know, whatever something small is, but, you know, the light's so low, I got to take a flash shot. On a lens like this, you're able to back up far enough, like a regular 50mm, essentially, as an analogy, and just use your pop-up flash and take a wonderful flash shot. Now, if you do use the lens hoods like this, or these two actually come together, this is a regular DX lens hood, and this is the second one that they include. They call it the APS-C crop sensor hood. Obviously, you're going to have an issue with flashes, your flash getting in the way of the lens hood, so that's no good. Point being, another addition, like I said, this is a very heavy lens, by the way. Just take a look at the side of it. You have an autofocus / manual switch. You have two varieties of optical stabilization. Switch 2 is for vertical shake, although I never used it and noticed any difference. Switch 1 is just standard optical stabilization. Does work really good. Now, I've decried decried vibration reduction, and of course Sigma calls it optical stabilization. Same thing. It's moving an internal element so that you get maximum reach. But on taking a macro shot, like say a bumblebee, it's in low light or something, or you want to take a picture of some sort of piece of fruit and it's bad lighting, and you didn't bring your monopod with you, which of course you should be smacked for that. So you got no monopod, you got no tripod. Optical stabilization does have its place. I don't totally decry vibration reduction, or what Sigma calls it, optical stabilization. So this is a true macro slut's dream lens, and I can say that while it is an expensive lens, and I'm all about saving money, if you are a macro slut like myself, and you want by the way, this lens, it's IQ, it is damn sharp. I mean, it is just effing sharp. I do give it a top rating only in the proprietary mention that if you do a lot of macro photography, and you know very well that you got to set up a bracket, your flash bracket, and you got to get really close, even with the 100mm, obviously nowhere near as close as you would with a 40 or a 60. Every millimeter counts in macro photography. That the great thing about this is you can use a pop-up flash, and if it's low light and you don't want to whip out your bracket, and you don't have your monopod, I can actually use this like a regular lens, use a pop-up flash, although that's not the best flash. Obviously, I'm not about using pop-up flash, but something in a pinch, you see something, you take a shot of it. And this is a great fast sports lens because it got really fast autofocus and it's damn quiet. So you do have optical stabilization, so you don't need a monopod or tripod, and you're able to back away from your subject. Because the worst thing in macro photography is A, sticking your camera up the ass of what it is you're shooting, which creates issues, and secondly, that creates a second issue of lighting. You're either casting a shadow, or you gotta have your special bracket, flash bracket, macro flash bracket set up like I showed you before. Now these are the two lens hoods together. This is the FX only lens hood, and on the right side is the DX. So if you're using this on an FX camera, there, where you just combine the two. It's really kind of stupid. I mean, I don't even know why they did this. It's really dumb. Obviously, you were not able to use a pop-up flash with macro photography with this huge honker sticking out the front of the lens. You can kind of see why. But since the effective crop sensor range is on APS-C camera is 225 millimeters, and that makes things wonderful. Because any macro photographer will tell you the great thing about macro is if you got a nice long macro like this, and you got optical stabilization, what it does is, while the lens is a heavy bastard, you're able to back up from what it is you're shooting, which is awesome, and that won't scare off your bumblebee or your lizard or your squirrel or whatever sort of indigenous critter that it is you're shooting, or whatever, and you're not casting a shadow. And the addition of the fact that it does have optical stabilization, you are, if you don't have a monopod or a tripod, you're able to do backed away, nice handheld macro photography. And those two things combined, makes this lens wonderful. Does it replace the Kina? No, it doesn't. Kina's superior as a portrait lens. It's got 9 elements. This sucker's got 19 glass elements in it. That being said, while it has slightly muddy blues, as I told you about the dielectric capacitance of glass, nevertheless it is damn sharp. I do give it a top recommendation. Now, as a top recommendation, that, as I said, has to be limited to people like me that are a macro slut and love taking macro photography shots. What this comes with, by the way, other than a stupid cardboard box, are these two hoods, which is really kind of stupid. It only needs one hood, FX or DX, so they thought, well, that's, since you got a 2¼ millimeter APS-C crop sensor mode, let's stick an additional. Really kind of dumb. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And it comes with this nice little zippered case jobby here that you can pack around. Who gives a crap about that? I never use them. I don't like them, really. They are useful to some people. As said, this lens is damn heavy, with a lot more than Takina, and we're talking about $380 new versus $1,100, or full-blown retail is $1,200. Although, like I said, B&H, This lens is $1,100. It is a 2.8 f-stop lens. It is sexy, it is dreamy, but it does have a proprietary recommendation from me as, like I said, and I just love the piss, the dog piss out of macro. I just love the piss out of it. You can make belly button fuzz and just like weird crap in your basement look fascinating with a wonderful macro. And what this does is it's just like kind of taking the shackles off a 60mm or 100mm if you're doing proprietary macro work. As I keep repeating myself, so you're able to back away, you're able to use a pop-up flash, although that's not my recommendation, but you're also able to do, if you don't have a monopod or a tripod handy, you know, say you're out in the orchard, you're out in the field somewhere, you know, you got a crap load of gear, although you should always have a monopod with you, you really should. But this is the one time where optical stabilization gets a high recommendation from me, because you are able to hand hold. Say you got a bumblebee on a pretty flower. Oh, isn't that pretty? I don't have time to whip out my monopod. So just flip on the optical stabilization, hand hold the shot, really fast focus, and the optical stabilization works great, and you're able to back up from your subject, you know. So important in macro photography, especially on critters, because you don't scare them away, and therefore you're able to get the shot. You know, when you're got a little subject and you got to shove the lens up the ass of the subject, that usually scares them away. So, yeah, I might have repeated myself too much in this video, whatever. Like I said, this is a caveat, a recommendation. I give this lens an extremely high recommendation for being super fast autofocus, extremely well constructed. And don't ask me about any other Sigma lenses, because other than Sigma Art Series, which this should really be called the Sigma Art Series lens. Basically, this is like a Sigma Art Series macro lens. I can't give any recommendation to any of Sigma's zooms whatsoever, so please God, don't ask me about them, because I can't recommend them, you know. Nobody's got their hand in my pocket, and I'm not going to shill for anybody. I'm going to give sensible, logical recommendations or lack thereof based upon usage. I've owned this lens for quite some time. I love the piss out of it, and it's my macro dream boat. That does not take away anything from the wonderful Tacchino 100mm. This has its own arena of usage, and I just got done telling you what that is. Compare and contrast. 11.8 inches minimum focusing distance and 9 elements, 19 elements and 15, a hair over 15 inches minimum focusing distance. Every millimeter counts when it comes to macro. Now, on an APS-C crop sensor mode like here on our DX7100, you have an effective crop focal of 225 millimeters, which is wonderful. So, to me, is it worth $1,100? If you're a macro slut, then the answer is hell yes. If not, then I'd say no, because this is a perfect portrait lens, and a lot of you people, I mean, you know, if you start creeping into, this is a perfect macro lens as it is, so doesn't take anything away from the Tacchino. I'm just doing another lens review on another spectrum, but I do give it a really high recommendation. But I cannot really tell a lot of you people out there that are tight on gear or whatnot, say, hey, you know, go out and buy this lens right now for $1,100. I can't do that. But if you're hardcore into macro, I can say, hell yes. So there are a lot of caveats in there, and I gave them to you, so you have to make a logical decision based upon the facts that I presented. Okay? Thanks for watching. Like this video, you can always drop me a buck or two. Tell me to go screw myself. Catch you later.